Hello everyone, this is Jason, your instructor. Today I'd like to present a case study. We're going to use a couple of images to just walk you through some of the ways that you would problem solve your editing and retouching. Um, so let's start. I'm in Bridge, and I went to the Folders tab. I have my external hard drive plugged in, and I navigated to this folder here called Onion Valley. And I have this folder of images from a trip I took a few years ago to the Sierra Nevadas. Um, and along the way, I stopped and took a few photos of some abandoned buildings that were on the side of the road. So I've got two here that I think present pretty typical problems that you'll encounter with digital photography, kind of the limitations of what the camera can do. And we're going to see the potential of what we can do with our software to just make these hopefully look like good exposures and just kind of a natural photo that hasn't been terribly manipulated. So I've selected these two. You can see them here in the preview screen. Let's go ahead and hit Command R. For you PC folks, I believe that's Control R. So let's look at these. We've got the interior of this abandoned cabin here. We look at our metadata. We can see I was shooting with a 15mm lens, which is kind of a mild fisheye, and you can definitely see that on the sides. See the curvature, that distortion there. We're shooting at f2.8 at 1/500th of a second at ISO 400. And then all the settings are the same. This one I shot at a 4,000th of a second. So in this one I was exposing for this information out the windows here for my highlights. The rest of this is pretty dark. You can see there's a little bit of clipping here, but we should have enough information to work with in here. In this one, got good detail in here, just a couple little spots of shadow clipping here, but nothing major because those are such tiny areas. The windows here, I don't even have to turn on this clipping warning, and I can see that that's going to be a problem. But let's just turn it on and see how bad it is. Pretty bad. These kinds of situations where you have such a long range of light and dark tones, this is going to push the limits of just about any digital sensor. Newer cameras these days are getting better as far as their dynamic range, but most cameras you're gonna kind of have to choose which way you want to expose this. On this day, I had a borrowed camera, no tripod, so I just kind of had to work with what I had. If I had had a tripod, I could have had these lined up exactly the same framing. Would have been really easy to merge them as an HDR. And HDR, when done right, just looks like a great exposure. In this case, kind of had to pick or choose which I wanted to expose for. Do I want to expose for the shadow areas or the highlights? If I had split the middle, I probably would have been okay in the shadow still, but maybe I wouldn't have had enough out here. But let's start with these and just see how each one responds to retouching, and then we can compare them. So in this one, as I mentioned, the first thing I'm looking for is what kind of problems does it have? What kind of things do I think I'm probably going to need to fix? One thing, I think I'd like to get rid of this barrel distortion here from the 15mm lens. That's a pretty easy fix. We can maybe even level this out a little bit and do some corrections with our transform tool here. Kind of get more of these vertical lines parallel with each other and kind of square this thing up. But right off the bat, first thing, I got to do something about these highlights. Let's see what's possible. So the first thing I do, just the obvious, let's go to the highlight slider, pull it down, and see what we get back. So as we move it, you can see, let's turn that back on. We don't really have anything that's clipped out there, but it's definitely still blown out and overexposed. As we bring it down, we got a little bit of detail back, but we don't have enough for it to really make much sense out here. It doesn't look attractive. And the rest of these areas with nothing in it, all we've managed to do is make it a little gray. If we bring down the white slider, it just compounds the problem. It's made it even a little bit more gray, and we haven't gotten any significant detail back. So let's zero that back out. So I think this we may just have to kiss goodbye. We could go the other direction and try to get rid of any last details hiding out there. That's going to start to look pretty harsh. This is the kind of thing that typically screams digital. Color negative film tends to handle overexposure a lot more gently. Instead of clipping like we get here, we have this kind of hard stop over here where you beyond that you just don't have any information. With digital, once it clips, there's nothing there. With color negative film, you'll have some information that's kind of compressed in there. And if you have a good scanner or you're a good darkroom printer, you can recover a lot of that, and it's actually can be pretty amazing to see what's possible. But I wasn't shooting with color negative film, so I have this problem to deal with here. In this case, I don't really want the image to look like this. I'd like to be able to show what's outside the window to kind of place this in context. So let's just pause right here on this one. We'll go to the darker exposure and we'll see what we can do with this. So for our darker exposure, right off the bat I can see that I've got all the detail I need out here. This is going to need to come up some. We could leave it like this, have it be sort of dramatic, but I'd like to see in here a little better. So let's open up the shadows. We could pull those up all the way if we wanted to. I think maybe if we leave it right about there, so it still feels like a shadow. It still feels there's some drama to it. And let's bring down the highlights so we can see what's outside a little bit better. And we could bump up the overall exposure just a hair. Bring down our highlights some more. That's starting to look more like it would have been to your eye. Let's look out the window here. I think white balance wise, I think that's pretty good. It looks like a hot sunny day, as it should. In here, I think there's some work we could do with the color here. But the next thing that I think needs to happen would be we have this barrel distortion here. Some people like that. I find it's kind of distracting. It just reminds me too much of what kind of lens I'm shooting with, and I think it pulls people away from the image and back to the gear that you used. So let's go. Right now we've been doing all this in the basic tab, which is this first one here. We'll go down to this one, lens corrections, and we can check these two boxes. Chromatic aberration is, let's see if we can find any in here. If it's not there, there's no need to correct it, but I believe we probably will. Chromatic aberration is some color fringing that you can get around out of focus areas, particularly highlights, and I can see some right here. It tends to be, most commonly you'll see purple or green, but you'll see other colors, maybe blue sometimes. So let's check this box. Often that will get rid of it, but I still see it, so we'll have to do it manually over here in this tab. But the next thing that we should do, I'm going to check the Enable Profile Corrections box, but I'd like you to see what it does. And let's check the box. I'll uncheck it, check it a few times. You can see it's basically flattening out the photo a bit and removing that curvature that you get with a lens that's that wide. Let's check that box. That looks pretty good. Let's zoom back in and look at our chromatic aberration. You can see it here. It's not too bad in this image, but it's the kind of thing, a lot of times you'll see it maybe in highlights on water. If you have some sparkly highlights on water, maybe you're at the beach, you'll see it there. If you're shooting glassware, you might see it in that. But let's go to the manual tab and let's bring up the purple amount and watch it disappear. So I can still see it a little bit. We need to adjust the hue, and you can see it's pretty much gone now. Let's move over, see if we have any more lurking here. I don't see any. And I think that's pretty good. Chromatic aberration, I find, is one of those things that initially you don't notice, but once you've been trained to look for it, you can't help but see it. And it can be pretty annoying when you see it and you know that it shouldn't be there. Next, let's go over to the transform tool here. I think we could still, granted it's an abandoned building, so it's not going to be perfectly square, but I think we could level things out a little bit more. I'm going to go down here. I want a grid overlay because I need some kind of reference to square this up to. So if you look at these verticals here, they aren't quite parallel with our grid. And you can adjust the size of the grid too. If you have too fine of a grid, it gets distracting. It's hard to see what you're doing. I'm gonna open it up a bit more. And let's see. First off, let's level it a bit. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at the center of this. That's where kind of going to be my reference point. So I'd like to use that. Since I don't really have a horizon that's easy to judge what's level or not, and I didn't have a tripod when I was shooting, the easy thing to do would have been to level it then, but I didn't have a tripod. So I'm going to, so it didn't need much, just a tad. Right here I look and go, okay, that's pretty straight. That looks pretty parallel. I can see these lean in just slightly, and same here too. So they will eventually converge. Granted, it'll be somewhere out of the frame up here, but they're not parallel with each other. So we can go and make an adjustment with the vertical slider here. You can see how it looks like it's tilting the photo away from us at the bottom. If we go this direction, it's tilting it away at the top. And you can also see this curvature here. That's if I saw that and I didn't see anything else that had been done to this, I would look at that and say, oh, they probably did a lens correction to flatten out a fisheye or extreme wide angle lens. So let's bring this back in. I'd just like to get these relatively square. We may have to readjust our rotation, our leveling. I think that's pretty good. You can see we have a little bit of this where we've lost some image area due to our lens correction. We can just recrop this.